It got late there. So we will start just in a minute. Hello, is the slide visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me just move to. I think we had covered. Is it full screen? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we had covered up to this point. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just take 1 or 2 minutes to look at this slide and see that what kind of categorization is there and how we are classifying the various types of research designs, and then we will discuss the remaining ones. Sorry. See on this on this slide, we have exploratory research, and you will note that in case of what has happened. Yes, so you will note that we don't have any further branching in case of exploratory research, whereas in case of conclusive research, we have been discussing descriptive research, and within descriptive research, we have cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs, and descriptive conclusive research. Another classification for that is we have descriptive one side and causal research designs. The other types of designs which come under conclusive research. And then in descriptive, we have cross-sectional and longitudinal. And in case of cross-sectional, two possibilities are there. We can either go for single cross-sectional designs or multiple cross-sectional designs. And when we go for longitudinal, we can adopt either true panel design or omnibus panel design. So let us revise. We have exploratory and conclusive. In conclusive, two possibilities exist. We can adopt a descriptive design or causal design. In descriptive, we can go for either cross-sectional or longitudinal. And in longitudinal, we can adopt a true panel design or an omnibus panel, whereas in case of cross-sectional, we can go for single cross-sectional or multiple cross-sectional design. So If you recall, we have already discussed in detail up to this point the exploratory design, and we have also started discussing conclusive designs. And in that, we were discussing the cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs. So now let us go slightly deeper into these types of designs, and we will see that what we mean by these cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs. So if you recall, in the earlier interaction, I shared with you that in case of cross-sectional designs, each time we draw a fresh sample, whereas in case of longitudinal designs, what is happening is that the sample remains fixed. Now let us see what we mean by this sample remains fixed, and each time we draw a fresh sample. And another thing that we can make out from the names of these designs itself is when we say cross-sectional, so it means that it must be giving us a picture of things as they exist at a particular point in time. Or we say they will be giving us cross-sectional view of things, or they are also referred to as slice of time designs. Whereas longitudinal designs, if you recall the example that I shared with you, that in your mobile phones, all of us have cameras nowadays. Most of the mobile phones are separated in two modes. We have the still mode, where we take stationary pictures or only pictures, or we can activate it in the video mode. So longitudinal designs you can relate to the video mode, where it gives us an idea regarding how things change with the passage of time. That is what happens when we go for taking a video of certain thing. Video is nothing but a stitching together of separate images, and what happens is that it helps us in keeping track of that, in which direction things were happening, or what was happening, and what kind of activities, if suppose we are taking of an individual that video, what kind of activities that person was involved in or indulging in, and so on. So cross-sectional designs, remember that such designs are used when we are studying one or more variables within a given population at one point in time. And take the example that here, for example, in the context of our continent, that is Asia, these kind of designs are very popular. That is cross-sectional designs. In fact, in case of the doctoral studies, the research studies that we do, especially in the context of our country, you will find that most of these studies, they are based on this cross-sectional design. And the reason why we generally go for these designs is that we as researchers do not have access to too much of resources, because longitudinal designs require a lot of expenditure, a lot of money, and resources are tied up in that. And generally longitudinal designs, they require a lot of time also, which is not available, for example, for researchers who are going in for doctoral works or writing a research paper. Though longitudinal designs can be followed as far as longitudinal, if you have, in case of say consultants, in case of large organizations, commercial organizations can go for it, but as far as we are concerned, we generally do not go for it. So now, as far as organizations in China are concerned, this is one other example that I wish to share. They, in fact, an interesting thing that they encounter every year is lunar year holiday, and where a lot of traveling is happening. So if you're interested in carrying out studies, so it will give you a temporal or snapshot view of things that they existed at that point in time, when suppose you are administering the questionnaire during this period. Similarly, in case of our country, if you're administering a period during, for example, Diwali holidays, or for example, Durga Puja holidays, or for example, any other types of holidays, Eid holidays, so it will give us a snapshot, if suppose the study is being done during that point in time, that what was happening then, and not what happened prior to it, not what happened after that. Then see, cross-sectional designs, they generally are of great help to researchers in establishing associations. And here, remember, the sample elements, they are drawn from the population, and they are drawn at a single point in time. It gives us a snapshot view of things. And in contrast to longitudinal, remember, we here are not able to find out on a one-to-one basis how things were changing. So if you want to keep track of how things change with respect to each of your respondents, or with respect to each entity of interest, then longitudinal designs will always be advisable. So here what is happening in case of cross-sectional designs is that whatever survey you are carrying out, it attempts to be representative of some known universe, and in terms of not only the cases which you include for the purpose of the study, but also the procedure or the manner or the methodology that you will be adopting so as to select those individuals or cases for the purpose of the study. So remember that the moment we have moved on from exploratory research to conclusive, the underlying assumption is that we will be following some kind of probability sampling procedure so as to arrive at a word sample. So this means that even in this cross-sectional designs, the assumption is that probability sampling procedure will be used to draw the sample so that it is representative of the population of interest. So a lot of emphasis is placed on selecting the sample, and as we have discussed that probability sampling procedures are adopted here. Cross-sectional designs, just now we saw in the earlier slide that there are two possibilities. We can go for single cross-sectional designs or we can go for multiple cross-sectional designs. So again, as the name itself is indicating, in case of single cross-sectional designs, there is only one sample that is drawn. In case of multiple cross-sectional designs, more than one sample is drawn. So let us see that what is the methodology that is adopted so as to draw the sample. So in single cross-sectional designs, what is happening is that, see, only one sample of respondents is drawn, and this is drawn from the target population, and we generate the data from that sample and we move forward. So these designs are also referred to as sample survey research designs because of this, sample survey research designs. So when we are saying that we draw a sample, this means that we will be drawing a fresh sample. Let me say fresh sample. The sample will not be fixed, and once we have drawn the sample elements would be approached for the purpose of generating data. Suppose you have a questionnaire with you, so you will administer the questionnaire or you will supply these elements of interest. Suppose these are human beings, suppose they are members of this class itself. So we will approach them with the questionnaire. The questionnaire would be administered on that particular sample. Let me repeat, sample, not the entire class, on that sample, and we will get some feedback from the sample using that questionnaire, and it will give us a snapshot view of things as they existed at that point in time, and we expect that whatever picture will be emerging will be reflective of reality, will be reflective of the entire population of interest, that particular target population. It will be reflective of that. So this at times is also referred to as, in several textbooks, as sample survey design. So then multiple cross-sectional designs, let us see what is happening. That in such studies, what we are doing is that we go for two or more samples, whereas in case of single cross-sectional, as the name itself was indicating to us, single sample is drawn, whereas in multiple cross-sectional designs, several samples will be drawn, two or more samples will be drawn, and the information that whatever we desire will be generated from that sample only once. It is not that each sample will be approached twice or thrice for generating data from the sample, but once we have drawn those multiple samples, what we do is that we approach them, we get the information, and things end there. We don't approach the same sample again for data. Each time we draw a fresh sample. So let me repeat that in case of multiple cross-sectional designs, we can go for, or we go for two or more samples of respondents, and information is obtained from the sample only once. And another thing is that often the information from different samples is obtained at different points in time. But remember, the difference here is when we say different points in time, maybe tomorrow again I'll be drawing a sample and I will again generate the data, but I will draw the sample fresh. It will be drawn afresh, and the basic difference between this cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs is that in case of longitudinal, the sample remains fixed. By sample remains fixed, we mean that the individuals with whom we'll be interacting each time, they are the same in case of longitudinal. But in case of cross-sectional, we are drawing samples again and again. That is, each sample that we go for is drawn afresh, and data is generated from that sample, and we move forward. We do not approach the same sample again for collecting data. Whereas in case of in case of longitudinal, we approach the same sample repeatedly for the purpose of generating data. Then there is another type of interesting analysis that we do using this particular procedure, and it is referred to as cohort analysis. And cohort analysis is nothing but a type of multiple cross-sectional design. cohort analysis, let me repeat, it's a type of multiple cross-sectional design. So let us see that what is this multiple cross-sectional design, or this cohort analysis, and why is it multiple cross-sectional design. See, here what we are doing is that a series of surveys may be carried out by the researcher, and these surveys may be carried out at appropriate time intervals. For example, it may be the time interval may be 6 months, the time interval may be 1 year, and where what we do is that we will serve the cohort, and here the cohort will serve as the basic unit of interest from our point of view. Take, for example, those of you who will be, or who graduated, or for example, who will be graduating in say 2021, those who graduated in 2019, those who passed out, for example, in 2020. So each of them, that is those who passed out in 2019, those who passed out in 2020, passed out in 2021, and who will be passing out in 2022, each of them will comprise a separate cohort from the point of view of the researcher. So the researcher may be approaching each of these cohorts at different points in time. And again, let me repeat that this is the basic difference. Though in case of longitudinal also we approach the sample at different points in time, but the sample in case of longitudinal, let me repeat, it remains fixed. Whereas in this case, what's happening is that as far as that cohort is concerned, from that cohort we will draw a sample, and we will generate data, we will administer a questionnaire. So just as is explained here, that group of students graduating in this, they will comprise a cohort for me, and this basically will be the commonality as far as that group is concerned, nothing else there. So this is another thing. Another example that we can consider is that, see, we may be interested in, say, studying the average income of such students who are graduating in a certain year, and we may be studying this or maybe capturing information pertaining to this average income for the next 10 years, suppose, following their graduation. And if you're doing something of this type, then it is an example of cohort analysis. Another example of this can be that every year, say for example, consumer satisfaction surveys are being done by organizations. So when they are carrying out satisfaction surveys every year, they approach a different set of individuals every year. And if something of this type is done, remember that it comes under the heading of, first of all, multiple cross-sectional analysis. It is not every year we will be approaching, and we may be approaching, for example, the cohorts. For example, this cohort this procedure may be adopted by us. So a cohort of students would be graduating in 2020, and we may attempt to compare, for example, this cohort with the previous cohort, or for example, those who will be passing out later. And if this methodology is adopted, we will refer to this as nothing but cohort analysis. Then this is schematic or diagrammatic representation of what we mean by this. So cohort A would be, say, those who are in who are in of a particular age. Cohort B would be, for example, in 2040, 2070, those who are of a certain age. So it can be, we discussed that it can be those who are graduating in a certain year. So you may be interested in, for example, in studying people who belong to different age bands. So the cohort, the commonality would be that each of them is 20 years old. So we studied them in 2020, then we will study another cohort, for example, which is 20 years old in the next year, or we may have studied, for example, 2011, and we may continue with this for till the time our objectives are met. Then there are 6 W's as far as this descriptive research is concerned that we need to remember. And what are these 6 W's? Who, what, when, where, and the way. Now, what we mean by this, and these are something, these W's are similar to what the journalists do when they're reporting some kind of incident, or for example, they're preparing their report. So for example, who, when we say who, to us in social sciences or from the point of view of our discussion, it means that who should be considered for the purpose of the study. Whom should we consider? Where means that where exactly we should be contacting the respondents for the purpose of information that we require from them. So who should be considered by us? Where is that? Where exactly we should be interacting or contacting these individuals? When we say when, for us, when would mean that when should the information be obtained from the respondents? When? Then when we say what, So we should be clear about what exactly is the information that we should be requiring or we should be generating from the respondents. We should not be generating junk. We should not be generating useless information. Only pertinent information has to be generated by us, or we have to obtain it from the respondents. So when we say why, so we should be clear that why are we obtaining this information from the respondents? Why is this information useful to us? And when we say the way in which information will be generated, it means that how we are going to obtain the information, the way in which we are going to obtain the information. That has to be very clear to the researchers. That is, so let me repeat that when we are carrying out descriptive research, we need to be clear about the 6 W's, and these 6 W's are who, where, when, what, why, and the way. And who we are referring to, that who should be contacted. When we say where, we should be clear regarding where that individual should be contacted. Now, for example, if your respondents are, say, suppose employees are of interest to you, so ideally you should be contacting them in the organization. I say ideally. Suppose the respondents of interest are family members, so ideally you should be contacting them while they are in their home settings, while they are at their homes. Ideally, I'm saying you should be contacting them, because sometimes what happens is that place also plays an important role in the nature of response that is emerging from the respondents. Then when we say where, for example, we should obtain the information today, or we should be obtaining, for example, in case of the Chinese example that we were discussing, during the time when they will be having those lunar holidays, or for example, in case of our country, during the time when, for example, Diwali holidays are going on. So if you want to study any phenomena which relates to that particular period, ideally we should be administering the questionnaire during that period itself, because otherwise what may happen is that respondents may suffer from loss of memory, and because of that what may happen is, or they may encounter difficulty in recollecting what is of interest to us as researchers, and we may not be able to capture the desired information, or the quality of information may not be that good. When we were discussing cross-sectional designs, though I've already discussed a lot about longitudinal, but very briefly we'll again see that what longitudinal designs mean. So here, remember that I shared with you that the sample remains fixed. So one of the important characteristics, or the most important characteristics of longitudinal research designs, is that here the sample or the samples, they remain fixed. That is, a fixed sample of population elements is measured repeatedly. See, in case of multiple cross-section also, we were approaching those samples, but each time we were drawing a fresh sample, and none of the samples was approached repeatedly or approached again for the purpose of collecting data. But in longitudinal designs, inherently, remember that longitudinal designs, they have a fixed sample, and we approach that fixed sample repeatedly with our questionnaires, and we keep requesting them, or we keep approaching them for the purpose of collecting information that we require, so in the hope that it will help in solving the problem that we are trying to address. So longitudinal designs in fact differ from cross-sectional designs in that the sample remains the same over the period of time. For example, the study may continue or may extend to 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. The sample would remain fixed in case of longitudinal design. Now, in case of cross-sectional design, let me repeat and let us again, try to recall that it will give us, cross-sectional designs will give us that what was the snapshot of the variables of interest at that point when the questionnaire was administered. Whereas in longitudinal, it will give us a series of pictures. Again, try to relate it to the video mode that I discussed with you as far as your mobile cameras are concerned. Then longitudinal designs, the greatest advantage, in fact, of this is that it can be of help to us in detecting change, and change to the extent that we can find out that how individual units have changed. Whereas in case of cross-sectional designs, what happens is that though we can detect change, but the change can be detected at the aggregate level, not at the individual level. So here in case of longitudinal designs, sometimes what we do is that we also use the term panel for longitudinal designs. Why? Because we have fixed sample, and that fixed sample is referred to as the panel, and that is why this is also referred to as panel design or longitudinal design. So and who are these individuals who are part of my fixed sample? Remember, these are those people who have agreed to be part of my sample. they have agreed to provide me information at different intervals of time. So when they have agreed to, and we have decided as researchers that these people will be part of my sample, so this means it is expected that I should have followed some kind of scientific procedure in deciding that who will be part of my sample. But most of the cases, remember, this is not how things really are. So there are a lot of issues as far as drawing up of this sample is concerned, and there is a lot of criticism also as far as drawing up of this sample is concerned. That is how researchers decide on this sample, and next we will discuss that what are the issues which are involved and how exactly we can address the issues which affect our research because of the imperfections in the sample or the fixed sample that we have. So generally, these syndicated service providers or syndicated firms, they maintain these panels, and remember that these people agree to be part of your research or part of your sample or part of your panel because they expect something in return, and that something in return should not be money. It should not be in the form of cash. It can be in the form of gift coupons. It can be in the form of some other incentives. But another thing is that suppose you are carrying out a study for organization X, so it should not be that you give gift coupons from organization X, because if they are from organization X, what would happen is that the responses would be biased, and that is why we see to it that the panel members should not in any way be given incentives which they think are originating from the organization regarding which study is being done, because we want to avoid bias from creeping in. Now, since when the same units are being measured repeatedly, because see, when we are approaching the same group, the fixed sample repeatedly, then remember that variations may be caused by changes in the sample, and they may be eliminated, and in the sample they may be eliminated, and even small variations may become apparent to us. Because what is happening is that each individual we can track. For example, in our panel, we have an engineer, we have a doctor, we have a farmer, we have a housewife, we have a student. Suppose this is our panel. So we know our panel, and these people are generally from different households. So what we do is that they have given us consent that you can approach me at different points in time with different questionnaires or maybe the same questionnaire. So when the response is originating from them, we have this information that this questionnaire has been filled up by the farmer, by this farmer who is part of my panel, by this doctor who is part of my panel, by this engineer who is part of my panel, and so on. So we know, and so that is why it is said that we can track even changes at the individual level. So these even minor changes, in fact, they can be easily captured by us if we are following this kind of design, that is panel design, or what we are doing, for example, in case of longitudinal study. Then in case of longitudinal designs, it is said that because the panel has agreed to provide you responses, so we can take some liberties with them. Liberties in the sense that they can be approached with slightly lengthy questionnaires. That is, your questionnaire may run into 10 pages, but because this person or this group has agreed to be part of your panel, and they are willing to provide you responses, so you can approach them with even lengthy questionnaires, and large amounts of data can be collected by you as a researcher. Then another thing is that in case of longitudinal designs, there is less of reliance on memory. Now, when we say less of reliance on memory, just try to recall that in case of cross-sectional designs, I shared that suppose I draw a sample from your class. Now, I draw a sample and I then approach them and administer them a questionnaire, and in that questionnaire, I am trying to ask about things that they purchased 2 weeks back. So it's related to some FMCG items, and you are giving me responses through that questionnaire regarding those items which were purchased, or some item which was purchased, say 2 weeks back. So there is a possibility that you may be forgetting some of the issues which are there, which I'm trying to probe using the questionnaire. But in case of longitudinal design, the greatest advantage is that because these people are already known to us, they're already identified. So what I can do is that I can even provide them questionnaires beforehand, and I tell them that the day you purchase this particular brand or this particular item, and after you have consumed it, please respond to this questionnaire. So the questionnaire may already be with them with this instruction that after they have consumed that product, please immediately respond to this questionnaire so that they don't have to rely too much on memory, and whatever they have experienced, it is fresh as far as their minds are concerned, and they can give you responses immediately. In fact, we will discuss later that nowadays a lot of technology is being used by researchers in this context, and even data, real-time data can be generated in certain situations if you have a fixed panel with you. Interesting example that I would like to share is that a study published in 2017, it was reported that in our continent, that is Asia, during this 25-year time period span, only 7% studies that were published in the domain of HR, they followed this longitudinal design, and rest 93%, they were all following cross-sectional design. So it basically supports what I discussed with you earlier, that we as researchers or as students of social sciences, we generally do not go for longitudinal studies, or we do not follow those designs because of the paucity of resources, because we don't have that much of time, we don't have that much of money to back up those kind of studies. Longitudinal designs, they suffer. See, what are the disadvantages? These panel members, sometimes who have otherwise agreed to be part of my panel, they may refuse, because see, you can't force them. Though I said that we can take liberties, we can administer lengthy questionnaires, but there may be situations where some of them may disagree, some of them may simply refuse to cooperate, and they may say that no, they do not wish to be bothered today, or they do not wish to be bothered as far as this questionnaire is concerned, or at this point in time I'm busy elsewhere, just like it can happen in case of a cross-sectional design also. So refusal to cooperate may be there. There may be issues of mortality. Now mortality, we are not referring to it, God forbid, from the point of view of death of the individual who is part of my panel, but here we are referring to it from the point of view of that individual who is part of my panel. Suppose a doctor is part of my panel, and he belongs to my panel, which is from Delhi. So this doctor may shift residence, and suppose the doctor may move from Delhi to Mumbai. So I will refer to this as mortality. Another possibility is that the doctor was part of my panel because he or she stayed in a particular locality of the city, and I wanted that this doctor should represent that locality. Suppose the doctor shifts residence from that locality to some other locality. Now what is happening is, now that doctor is no more representative of that group who this doctor was supposed to earlier represent. So now I have to look for a substitute. But remember that substitute will never be an exact replica of this doctor who has left me, or who I say, mortality has happened, regarding which mortality has happened. So replicas, substitutes will always be substitutes. They will not be an exact replicas. So whatever response will be emerging from that substitute will not be exactly what would have emerged had the doctor responded, or had the doctor continued to be part of my panel. Another issue is that payment sometimes some researchers or organizations, they also give payments, as I told you earlier, that avoid giving payments. Some other incentives, say, suppose in the form of gift coupons, can be given. But if you start giving payments, then what happens is that certain types of individuals may be attracted to your panel, and these people are not after research. They are not there because of love for research. They are there because of the money. And that is why what happens is that whatever responses would be emerging, they would be biased. They may not be giving reflective of reality. So we need to be careful as far as this aspect is concerned. Then another issue may be that of a response bias. So what happens is that those people who have joined fresh, or who have been recruited by the researcher freshly into the panel, they start giving inflated responses in the hope that that will make the organization happy, or convince them that they are involved in giving responses. So they start giving responses which are inflated, which are on the higher side. So if that is what is happening, is the response will be said to be a biased response. Another problem that we encounter in case of panels is that sometimes somebody continues to be part of my panel for very long. Suppose the person has been there in my panel for 5 years. So what happens is this person starts believing that he or she is an expert, and that is why he or she has been allowed to continue for so long. And this person starts giving me expert responses. So believing that I should be giving responses which this organization should think are coming from an expert. See, remember, we as researchers never want responses to be of a particular type. We want genuine responses. We want responses which should be reflective of reality. So again, when we are having such individuals or such entities as part of the panel, we need to be careful when we are analyzing the responses. So we need to be we need to see to it that people should not be allowed to continue for very long in the panel, because otherwise again we'll be suffering from this kind of problem, that is bias would creep in. Then another thing is that bias may also result from boredom and fatigue on the part of the respondent. So we have to, I keep repeating that we have to see to it that the questionnaire or the instrument which we are using, or the research instrument which we are using, it should not be lengthy. It should not make the respondent bored. It should not make the respondent fatigued when they are giving us responses. We will have, some of you may be wondering that I'll be having an extended class, 2 hours continuous class. I'll give you a 10 minutes break in between. So we'll be having a break of 10 minutes, and just within 3 or 4 minutes we'll start with that break, and then we'll meet again. So please do not log out, because otherwise you will encounter difficulty in entering this room, in entering this particular meeting. So I'll suggest that do not log out, but we will have a break of 10 minutes. The other thing is that your attendance for the second session will be different. The attendance form would be different. So that would be open, and I have already sent you the link. It will open at 12:05. So you will be having time. So in between, when we have a break, if you wish, you can mark your attendance, and we will join after 10 minutes. So just 1 more minute I will take. Okay, let us stop here. Let the break start, because it's already 12:05. So let the break start. We'll have a 10 minutes break, and I'll suggest that because I've already informed you about the attendance, let me repeat: you have to mark the attendance for the second session separately. So I hope all of you are getting me. Hello, I hope all of you are getting me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just a moment before you leave, let me just have an idea regarding how many of you are there right now. So we have roughly 84 people in the group. Sorry, 86 people. Somebody has just now joined. Okay. Just a moment, please. Yes, you can break now. You can have a break, 10 minutes break.